Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from today. I'm truly excited to be here with you to officially open our Startup School Gen AI training program. My name is Timon. I am the go-to-market manager at Google for Startups. I'm also one of the team members that's been behind the scenes creating this program. For the past few years, I've been leading various startup schools, but this year's edition is going to be amazing. I'll be your MC for today's session and for the next 5 weeks too, so I hope we'll be great friends by the end of it. Before we jump into today's class, I wanted to run through a couple of important housekeeping points that will help you make the most of your time at Startup School. As you can see on your screen now, there is a chat function on the right-hand side and a Q&A panel at the bottom. We have Google AI experts on hand to answer any questions that come up throughout the class, so please ask your questions in either of those spaces. We're going to save the last 10 minutes of class for a live Q&A with our instructor, and we'll select the most common question asked. Please upvote questions in the Q&A panel and use the chat space to converse with other participants. We are recording each class, and you will be able to watch them back on demand at a later stage, and you can access these recordings via the main program page where you are now. We won't be sharing slides, but we will share links to the labs covered in class, both during the class in the chat QA panel and also in our weekly recap emails. You can also find the list of labs on the resources tab on our website. And last but not least, this is a hands-on training series, and most classes will cover a lab. All of these are available on the Cloud Skills Boost platform or on our Google Cloud GitHub repo. We will share all the links with you to access both of these. We recommend using the time during the class to watch our instructor going through the lab and completing it after the session on your own. The credits provided will last you for the full 6 weeks of this program, so you have plenty of time. If you do have any issues accessing the labs, don't worry, just come back and try again later. Speaking of the Skills Boost, as I mentioned, we are using practical labs as the key component of this training program. To be able to access these labs free of charge, you'll need to fuel your account with credits on the Cloud Skills Boost platform. For those of you who registered before 15th of January, so that was Monday, you should have received instructions in either reminder or confirmation email on how to activate and top up your account with credits. And your unique code to obtain these was there too. For those of you who just recently registered, please scan the QR code on the screen to activate your account and redeem your credits. If you have any questions about this or need any assistance with credits redemption, please contact support@quicklabs.com. We've also added this to the chat space on the right-hand side. And well, looks like that's it from me. I'll now invite Prashant Subramaniam to the virtual stage to lead our first class, which is Current State of Generative AI. This class will include details on our very exciting launch before the holidays of a model that you just might have heard about. And of course, I'm talking about Gemini. I'll see you all later for the Q&A section. Enjoy the class, and Prashant, floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Timon. Thank you so much for that intro. And hey, everyone, good day to you all. And glad to see you all join me in this session, in the first session of this program. And I'm going to be talking about the current state of generative AI. My name, as Timon introduced, is Prashant. I am a developer advocate with Google Cloud. I'm based out of Bangalore in India. And I'll be walking you through, let's say, some content for the first few minutes of this session, and then we will immediately dive into the hands-on part. As Timon mentioned, a lot of this programming is about hands-on. You all know this, and this is the reason why you're all here. Generative AI is transforming how we interact with technology. What does this mean? You may not have realized this, but let's try to understand what exactly this means. When we think about the applications for AI, we talk about this in three broad areas. One on the personal front, second on the societal front, and third on the business front. Most of you have interacted with some of the products that is there on the screen here. right? Google Lens, Google Maps, YouTube, Magic Eraser. Uh, all of these capabilities are available for you, and this is powered by the capabilities of generative AI. But this is for you as a consumer, right? You see a lot of these capabilities. What does it mean for you, for business? The third thing we spoke about, when you want to build such experiences for your consumers, for your end users. And this is why we give you Gen AI on Google Cloud. Now, Google has a deep history of research and innovation, right? We have been doing Gen AI, we've been working on this for over 20 years now. We are able to integrate this very deeply across our product portfolio, right from the hardware to the platform, and let you work with the Gen AI products and capabilities that we have. And we'll talk more about this as we go on. And being Google Cloud, this is built on a foundation of readiness for the enterprise, right? So this is why Gen AI on Google Cloud is a place where you should be looking for to build out your experiences. You know this, but Google has a very, very long history of research and innovation, right? We have been in this era of large language models, Gen AI, right from 2017, where we published the first paper on transformers. And since then, we have been putting out various models out there and various products and capabilities out there for you to go and use, right? All of you have seen this. But now we have what is there is the next chapter of generative AI, the next innovation in Gen AI, which is Gemini. Gemini is one of our most capable and general model that we have ever built. And it's a result of collaboration across Google teams, including Google DeepMind and Google Research. And we bring this capability, we bring this model to you today. At Google Cloud, we have a very simple mission. We want to make AI helpful for everyone, be it to create amazing content, to synthesize and organize information, to automate your business processes, or if you want to build engaging customer experiences. Our Gen AI products and our products serves you and helps you to do all of these things. In fact, we see that generative AI is driving a lot of new opportunities, right? From making your complex data easily accessible, to bringing a new conversational experience and improving the online interactions that consumers are having, to creating content, generating new content at the click of a button, right? So at your fingertips. And it also lets you customize the foundation models to your specific industry needs, to whatever you would want to. In fact, we are seeing a lot of use cases where Gen AI is being used. Um, these are some of the use cases that we have put together. Again, there's a lot of content on the slide. You probably don't need to see all of this, but know that across those four broad areas that we have been talking about before, or except for the customizing, the three broad areas, use cases that we're talking about, there are various things that you could do, from improving, like I said, for example, the product discovery, content discovery, right? You're able to actually find information very easily, very intuitively. Product recommendation is something which is one of the very popular use case. Customer service automation, improving the experiences of your end users via Gen AI, and also bringing in a lot of efficiencies. Business process automation, searching within documents, so Q&A capabilities, searching within documents and bringing out the information in a way that is intuitively understandable for the end users. This is something that various companies and various organizations have been using to build out using Gen AI. What about on the regulatory side, right? So it also helps you understand some of these documents, regulatory documents, compliance. It helps you create new documents, summarize the content that is available, and even helps developers be more efficient and accelerates research in this area. So Gen AI has a lot of capabilities, a lot of use cases across the spectrum. And we can't wait to see what you put Gen AI to use and what kind of use cases you come up with. So let's talk about the AI ecosystem within Google Cloud. Um, there are two sides of this, right? So one is where you would want to build products, or organizations would like to build products using Gen AI and build experiences for your end users. And that is where we give you Vertex AI. And we'll talk a little bit more about Vertex AI as we go on. So Vertex AI is for enterprises, is for you to build out these experiences for your consumers. And then you have Duet AI. Duet AI is again a product which brings out the capabilities of AI for developers. And in fact, there are a lot of personas that Duet AI helps out with, but for developers and practitioners, if I could broaden the scope. Right, so this helps you work very closely, work more easily and efficiently with Google Cloud due to the tight integration that we have and due to the capabilities that we bring in via Duet AI. We'll double click into Vertex AI. That's going to be the scope for what we're going to be talking about from now on. And Vertex AI is our platform for our AI capabilities, by which you can use our AI capabilities. And this runs on top of our world-class AI infrastructure. This has advanced TPU and GPU capabilities that you can use for training and serving your models. In fact, 70% of the Gen AI unicorns out there today are Google Cloud customers because of the capabilities, because of the value that we're able to bring. We have also seen a huge number of projects that have been created on Vertex AI, over 150 Gen AI projects that have been created on Vertex AI. So how do you actually go about using Vertex AI? What does Vertex AI bring to you? Now, as we saw at the bottom, we have our infrastructure components. This is where we have built this entire platform on top of the hardware capabilities that we have, the GPUs and TPUs that are available for to use. Then within the Vertex AI, we have the model garden. And again, I'm just quickly going to go through this. I will show this to you in the console in terms of what I'm talking about. But in the model garden, we have a wide variety of models that you could then pick and choose and use. Right? These are models that Google has published. These are open source models, as well as models from some of our partners. And this is where you can also use Gemini, which is our latest cutting edge model. Now, with these models, you would want to do something more on top of this. So this is where you have the platform that lets you build extensions, that lets you build connectors, that where you can ensure this model serves your business needs, taking care of things like grounding, fine-tuning, distillation, evaluation. A lot of these capabilities are available on the platform, and you will see more of this. We'll deep dive into more of these in these sessions coming up. But all these capabilities are what is available to you to use via Vertex AI. And then as we go up the stack, on top of this, you have some solutions that you could use. So you could use the Vertex AI search, you could use our conversational AI. We have the AI solutions that is readily available for you to use as well. And as I mentioned before, even Duet AI is built on top of this infrastructure that we are making available to you. And this is the entire suite of the Vertex AI that you can go and leverage. Specifically clicking into the model garden, and this is where you get to start using what we have made available. Right, so 130 plus enterprise ready foundation models are available here. As I said, it's all across from Google foundation models, specifically Gemini, which we will be talking about very soon, to the some models which are fine tuned or which are meant for specific tasks, which you could go ahead and use. For example, a speech to text, a translation, document OCR. These are things that you could actually use there. There are domain-specific models such as MedLM and SecPalm. These are things that you could actually go ahead and use for specific domain scenarios. And then, of course, you have more models, right, from the open source ecosystem and the partner ecosystem. So this is a curated set or curated list of models that is made available for you, and you could choose what to use based on your use cases and your requirements. This is something that's very important to us. It's very core to us that all of our technologies, all the models are built with responsibility and safety at the core. We ensure that we have comprehensive safety evaluations. We apply these evaluations as we are building all these models and ensure that these echo the ethics that we want when we talk about responsible AI, the way that you should be using these models. We also have looked into doing a lot of research on some of the potential risk areas, right? So what are the kind of new risk areas that may show up when you're using these models or in the world of Gen AI? And we try to get ahead of it, and we have built these models keeping all this in mind. And of course, we collaborate. It's not just us coming out, but we collaborate with a group of external experts and partners who help us understand what a good responsible model means, what are the kind of potential risk vectors in these kind of models, and we make these models available to you after a lot of extensive testing and analysis. So this is how AI has evolved over the time, and this is so that we get a perspective of where Gen AI is coming in and what do we have today that we can actually go ahead and start using. So previously, we used to have the world of predictive AI, right? And that is something that is there even today. But predictive AI is something which we typically talk about in terms of regression, classification, sentiment analysis, entity extractions, and so on. So this is where you have some sort of a well-defined output with some sort of a labeling, and you're able to then use train your models based on some of this data and then predict the labels for new unknown unseen data. And then we go into generative AI, right? So generative AI is where we use and this is something that we've been seeing for a while now, but this is where we use text and we build these models based on huge volumes of text, essentially, also other kinds of data like images, code, and so on. And it gives you a lot of interesting capabilities, generative capabilities come out from this, right? For example, summarization, answering the Q&A, extracting Q&As, and even providing descriptions for images and videos. So this is coming in from the generative AI world. And then from Gen AI, we have now gone on to the world of multimodal Gen AI, right? So this is where we can understand images in a very natural way, right? We can it's not labeled data that you would do in the predictive AI, but based on the image, the models are able to now understand what the image is trying to convey. We can work with videos. We can work with various modalities of data, and that is why it is multimodal generative AI. So this is the evolution of some of these models, and we will talk about this again when I go into the product itself and I show you some demos. I will show you how exactly you work with multimodal AI, right, and what kind of capabilities these offer to you. And then you also have the tooling side that you see. So the tooling side is about from training, serving your models, ML ops, right? How do you manage the life cycle of these models that you're serving, that you're training and fine tuning and then serving and so on. And then, of course, a lot of capabilities. RAG is something we'll be talking about later. Prompting, fine tuning, right? So a lot of capabilities is how this space is evolving. The Gen AI space is evolving. Not just the models, not just the capability, but the way you work with them, the tooling that is there underlying this. Okay, a lot of talk. Right now, we have spoken about the history, how Gen AI came about, how the models have been evolving, what capabilities it is providing, what hardware Google Cloud is offering you to support to run these models. Right? Let's take a look at that now. Right? I'm sure all of you are waiting for that. So with that, we'll go into the skills boost. There are a couple of labs that are a part of this session, and Timon has mentioned this, and this will also be made available to you. So I will quickly jump into that. Okay. The first lab that we have is getting started with Vertex AI Gemini API and the Python SDK. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a Gemini API and help you use this or show you how you can use a Gemini API using the Python SDK. So that's the first one. And the second thing is we will go specifically into the multimodality side of Gen AI, of the Gemini, right? How you can use the multimodal capabilities of this. Okay, so this is Cloud Skills Boost. The two labs, as I said, this will be shared with you, and you should be able to open this up and start working through these labs. Now, what I would request from you is I'm going to go through the content of these labs. I mean, you're free to do this on the side, but I think it'll be a lot more better if you listen to me here so that I can help you understand what is it that we're showing as part of these labs. And after this, you can go at your own time. As Timon mentioned, these labs are going to be available for you for a while, and you can go try this out by yourselves. Right, so take a look at this, and is any concept in this that you don't understand that I'm talking about, which you want to double click into, these are exactly what you could put as in terms of questions. So this is the lab, as I said. If you're not familiar with Cloud Skills Boost, there is also a lab that helps you get familiar with Skills Boost, right? So you could also try that out. Essentially, what you do is you start the lab here on the left, and it provisions an instance for you where you can go and try this out, right? So whatever you need to get started is already available. And as you go through the content of the lab, you will see some of the instructions, right? So initially, we are going to be talking about the products that we're going to be using, right? For example, here you learn about what is Gemini, As I said, this is a family of Gen AI models that is developed by us. We have two kinds of models here. We have the Gemini Pro and we have the Gemini Pro Vision. Right? So Gemini Pro is meant to handle uh, textual information. You can work with text as text, in terms of single instance or in terms of chat, or with code. So you could use Gemini Pro for this, and the Gemini Pro Vision models support multimodal prompts. Right, so you can have as part of your prompt text, images, videos. Right, all the modalities can be given in as part of your prompt, and you will get textual or code responses as an output. There are also various ways in which you can interact with the Gemini API. You can use the Vertex AI Studio that is available on the Google Cloud Console. You could also call the APIs using curl commands, or you could use the Vertex AI SDKs that we have created. And in this lab, you will essentially be seeing the third way of doing it. You'll be looking at the Vertex AI SDK. Okay. The first section, again, this section of this lab after the introduction is about how to actually start your lab. So if you get started with this, your labs will start. You will get a username and password that you could use to log into this. Now I have that open, so I'm going to jump directly into that without spending time logging into it. But walk through this section to really understand how you can log in. Okay. And let me now, okay, let me go to the other screen. So this is the Google Cloud Console. This is where you would land once you start the lab from the Cloud Skills Boost. And this is Vertex AI. Now, if you don't see the screen, if you don't know where to find this, on the left here, you will see all your products that are available as part of Google Cloud. You can scroll through this, find Vertex AI and go into it. Or another way of you doing this is search for it, right? So search for Vertex AI and you can click on Vertex AI and you will land on this page. So this is the home for Vertex AI on Google Cloud, right? This is where you land. As I said, there are various ways in which you can use this. Quickly, let me walk through some of the things before I go into the notebook. So this is Model Garden. Model Garden is what I was talking about, where you see this 100 plus curated models that is available to you from Google and from our open source and partners. So you can look at all the models that are available here and choose which one you want to work with. Again, that's not in the scope for what we're going to be doing here, but since we spoke about it in the beginning, I'm letting you know this is how you find it. The second thing is the Vertex AI Studio. So on the left here, you see the Vertex AI Studio. If you go into the multimodal section, for example, you can go into the prompt design. Right, so here you go start working with your models, you type in your prompt, and this is an easy way for you to play with the Gemini APIs, right? See what it can do and work with it. So this is the second way of using or getting familiar with the APIs that we have. And as I said, the way that we're going to be doing it today is via the using the Vertex AI SDK. And for that, we are going to be doing running this on the Jupyter Notebook. So if you go into your workbench, you will see that a machine is already created for you. And this machine will be able to, you will be able to run an instance of Jupyter Lab on this machine, right, on the workbench. So once you open the lab, you will come up here. So this is once you click on the button that says Open Jupyter Lab, your Jupyter Lab opens up. And here you will see a lot of content that we have available covering various use cases, introductory use cases and advanced use cases. And we'll be going through each of these notebooks. Don't be overwhelmed seeing the number of notebooks that we have here. There are quite a few. And we will be covering most of these as part of this program, right? In each one of the upcoming sessions, we'll be talking about these. So the first thing that we're going to be doing, as I said, so this is the first Skills Boost lab. And you're being asked to open the Gen AI folder, go into Gemini Getting Started folder, and go into the Intro Gemini Python notebook, right? So this is what we're going to be doing. Also, the great thing of the Skills Boost platform is that as you work through those labs, you can check your progress here, right? So you're able to check if you've done the right thing, if you're executed the right command that the lab asks you, and so on. Right? So essentially, we are going to be opening this notebook and we're going to be working through all the cells of that notebook. Now, if you're not familiar with Jupyter Notebook, since this is the first session and just being a bit giving you a little bit more detail about this, right? So Jupyter Notebook is essentially a place where you can run your Python code, and it's usually the preferred way that we work with many of the machine learning areas, right? So it's quite easy, or once you get used to it, it's actually quite easy, right? So uh, you have these cells here, as we call it, and then you have various instructions, you have some commands, you have some text that is there that you can read through. So it's literally like you're reading a notebook. And this notebook, it's not just for reading, it's not just documentation, but it also has pieces of code that you can execute from within this instance itself. In order to run this, there are some keyboard shortcuts, but again, if you're new to this, you can always run this, right? So run selected cells, um, shift and enter, for example, is a shortcut to do it, or you just click this navigation link and this menu option, and then it'll do it for you, right? So this is the way that you can do things. You can work through this. You can also, you're not expected to, or there are some sections where you can create more cells and do put your own content. That is something that you can do as well, right? So use these options if you're not familiar with how to run the Jupyter Notebook. Okay, now as per the instructions, so let me get started with this. As per the instructions that we had on the skills post, we go into the Gen AI folder, we go into the Gemini folder, we go into the getting started and intro Gemini Python, right? So this is what we're going to work with. I have that open right here on my right. So this is how your screen is going to look like once you open the notebook. And let me close the section on the left, and I'll start walking you through this notebook. Okay, so initially you have some information, and again, it's good to read through all of these things, try to understand what is it that we're trying to do. So go through this. You also see here some of the objectives. What is it that we're going to achieve as part of this notebook? What is the expected outcome? This uses some resources on Google Cloud. In this case, you're running this within the Cloud Skills Boost, so all of this is taken care for you. So there are some costs because you're going to be using some compute, you're going to be doing some resources. Quickly, I'll walk you through this, right? So first thing is actually getting started. So the first thing that you need to do here is you need to install the Vertex AI SDK for Python. So Jupyter Notebook is running Python here, and we want to install the SDK for Python. So we will do a pip install, and the whatever is needed, the required libraries, essential libraries are going to be installed behind the scenes. Now that the requirements are installed, typically the good practice that we want to do is we want to restart the runtime. So this uses something called a kernel, and we want to restart the kernel that this notebook is running on. And once we restart this, you should be able to use the latest libraries that is available. Okay. So here we have the kernel is going to be restarting, and I'm expecting that it restarted. We will see that it actually worked when we run the next cells. As you can see, I'm running through some of these cells. And again, for those who are not familiar with the Jupyter Notebook, how you're working with it, the blue bar on the left is telling me which cell that I'm on. You will see this number change into an asterisk or a star, and then change back into a number. The number indicates the step sequence in which I executed it. And the star indicates that it is in processing. Right, so I will run this. You saw that it was a star and became 1. So this is the first code cell that I ran, other than the pip install. Yeah, after we restarted the kernel, essentially, right? So we restarted the numbering. So here we're importing some of the required modules. We are authenticating with our instance, right? So we're setting up the authentication. This will now allow us to work with the APIs. So these are some mandatory steps that you would need to do in order to get started working with the APIs. All right, so just run through all of these things. And the next thing is importing the Vertex AI libraries itself. So here we're going to be importing the generation config, generation model, image, and part. So let's go through that. And as it runs, it's going to be, there are some warnings that is given, not to worry about it, but essentially the required libraries have been imported. Okay. The next thing that we do when we start using the Python SDK or the Vertex AI SDK in any language of your choice, we're going to use Python here, is to actually tell which model we want to use. Now, if you had gone to the console, if you'd gone to the model garden, you would see that, as you know, as I showed you, we have these 100+ models. And in each of those models, it's identified, it doesn't identify, right? It's identified by a string. Now, you need to tell when you're working with the SDK which model you want to use. In this case, we want to use a Gemini Pro model. So here I am. I have instantiated the Gemini Pro model, and now I can start working with it. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do is just have a feel for the model, see that everything is working fine. So ask a question to the model and see that it gives you a valid response. Okay. So in this thing, we are saying responses, generate content. This is the prompt that I have. Why is the sky blue? That is a prompt. And what we're doing is we're using the streaming capability, right? So we're saying stream equals true. As you see here, the information is being was populating as it was coming in from the model, right? It's not that everything got populated at one shot. And this is the power of the streaming API. You're able to, again, you could have a very simple question. You could have, it depends on the model performance, or you could have a very complicated question and the completion takes time. And in these cases, you probably don't want to wait for a very long time, right? It depends on the kind of experience that you're building out. So if you can use a streaming API in these cases, and as the responses come in, you could start outputting it, right? If all it means is putting information out to the end user. So here, sky appears blue due to a phenomenon called Rayleigh scattering, and so on. There's a lot of information that is out there. But essentially, the question that we asked, the simple question that we asked, why is the sky blue? The model answered the way that it understood it, right? And there's a lot of detailed information here. Now, this is where you can go and try prompts out by yourself, right? So you can create a new cell, copy this existing cell, and then change the text, or maybe just edit it here, whichever way that you would want to use. So ask a different question, right? Play around with some of the prompts. These are some of the examples that is there here. What are the biggest challenges facing the healthcare industry? Very open-ended question, maybe, but try some of these prompts, and you will be able to see that the model gives you a response for this, and get a feel for the model. Okay, but that's a simple question, right? Let's try to see something more different. And oops, I executed that cell again. Okay. This time it's giving a different answer, and of course that is expected. Overall, the correctness of the answer is what matters, but the way the model generates, when you give a question without any conditions, or without the way that you're expecting the response to come out, you can expect that the response is going to come in a different format, or with a different style each time, right? And we'll see more about that, right? How you can be more specific when you're prompting. So this is something, right? Here, what I'm saying is create a numbered list of 10 items. I'm being specific about the items, I'm being specific about the numbered list, and I want each item in the list to be a trend in the tech industry. And each trend should be less than 5 words. The way you saw before, the question was very open-ended, right? The model could have interpreted it in any way, or could have chosen to answer it in any style. And we saw that by the two iterations that we did. Whereas here we are being very specific in terms of what we want. So let's run this. And now here we should see there are 10 different outputs that are generated. Again, we use a streaming API, so you saw the bullets being filled up as the responses came in. But essentially 10 tech trends, each less than 5 words, right? It looks to be right. So here I'm being very specific in terms of what I want the output to be, and the model gives me the output that I want. Okay, now the model also lets you provide different kinds of parameters, right? Or the API has the ability to pass these parameters to the model, and the way the model is going to respond to you is going to change. So, for example, we have the models here in this. When we set up the model called temperature, top P, top K, max output tokens, candidate count, and so on. What I would recommend is, this is, if you don't understand what this means, or how your machine learning models typically work, or how the Gen AI models typically work, you just go through the documentation and understand this. But in simple terms, when you play around with this, you will basically understand how these models actually work, right? So these are all probability values. Temperature, for example, from between 0 and 9, the closer you are to 1, the more creative and open-ended and different the model is, right? Whereas if you want consistency in terms of the output, you probably go closer to 0, right? So that is the temperature of the model. Top P, again, is the probability generally you have a probability of what the output tokens could be, and you can go away from the default by telling it choose the output tokens with the with within this x probability, right? So this, again, I can go into the technical side of things, but essentially what it says is the sum of the probability of all the tokens should be less than or equal to the number that is specified there, right? So that way you can control how wide open or how creative the model is when it responds to you with an output. And similarly, top k is to select the number of uh, select from within the number of probable output tokens that are generated, right? So again, these are models that can play around with if you want the model to be very precise, right? If you're generating an application where you want precise, correct answers that don't change each time you run it, then you set these numbers accordingly. And if you want it to be more creative, more open-ended, let's say you're writing an essay, or you're generating some videos, for example, or generating a storyline where you want it to be more creative and open-ended, then you play around with these parameters to make it more open-ended. Okay. Again, this is given to you as a notebook, right? So it's for you to now try this out. So the same why is a sky blue with a different generation config we're going to execute, and we will see what the response looks like. So here with again, it's talking a little bit more about red sunsets and sunrises. You can play around with the different kind of temperatures, different kind of top P and top K values, and you will see that the response is different, right? So this is again an exercise for you to actually try out. So now that you understand what the text-based models can do, let us now go into multi-turn conversations, right? So, or typically the way you would use, or you would have seen Gen AI being used in chat applications. So this is where there is some context, right? Since it's multi-turn, you ask a question, you get an answer, and then the next question that you ask, or the next interaction that you have, there is some context associated with it, right? The previous completion that has been given to you. Okay, so, and I'm just keeping a track of time so that I can show you the second notebook that we have as well. All right. So this is now you're going to start the chat way of interacting with this model. So I will use the start chat, and this is the Python API, the way that you do this on the Python SDK. There is, you set up with some initial prompt. My name is Ned. You're my personal assistant. I'm describing what my favorite movies are. Lord of Rings and The Hobbit, I expect. And based on my preferences, I'm asking the model to suggest a movie that I might like. Typical use case, right? Typical Gen AI use case where you're giving some information and then asking the model to help you along. Okay, let's execute this. So Chronicles of Narnia, Harry Potter, Aragon, Percy Jackson, quite a lot of things, right? Quite a few of these are some things that I have not seen. Okay, I need to bookmark these movies. You have some response here, right? Essentially, based on some input that you have given, these are what the model thinks are the movies that I might like. And now you can ask a follow-up prompt to this, right? And this is what is a multi-turn conversation, right? So I can now ask a follow-up question. Are my favorite movies based on a book series? So the movies that I mentioned, which are I mentioned two movies, right? The Lord of Rings and The Hobbit. So are these based on a book series? Let's see. And I've not specified which movies, but the model should know that I had initially called these two out as my favorite movies. So yes, both of these are based on books and of course written by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, what you could do is you could actually see this context that has been built up, right? You could see the chat history, and here you see the output. First thing is the role of a user, right? Which is the person that's interacting with the model. I am the user, and this is the prompt that I had. And then the model. So the role is the model is what the model output back to us. So the model outputs some information. Then following that, again, the role of a user, right? So I input another prompt and the model gives me back an output. So this is how the entire history is maintained in the chat, and it is able to now relate a prompt or a question that I asked to what happened prior, right? To what happened previously. Awesome. Text models, open-ended, being very specific, telling it exactly what to do, using some parameters to fine-tune the way the model gives you a response. and using the multi-turn conversation, right, or using the chat capabilities of the model. We have seen all of these things. Let's now go into the provision model. We use Gemini Pro until now. Let's go to provision, which is the multimodal model. And a lot of things that we're going to be doing, a lot of use cases that we're going to be creating are going to be based on the multimodal capabilities, right? So it's for us to now think about how we can use these models. So let's now play around with this model and see what it can do. So as I said previously, you need to specify what model you want to use. And this time I will instantiate the Gemini Provision model. Okay, the model is instantiated. We will create a few helper functions because it is multimodal. We want to work with not just text, right? So previously it was fine. You input a text, you output a text, all good. But now we're going to be working with images, potentially videos, and so on. So there are some helper functions, right? Let's not go into too many details about the helper functions. Yeah, I will run that cell so that these functions are loaded into the memory. Okay, so we have a method, we have a function called load from file, and this will load. So I'm going to highlight that here. Yeah. Okay, image load from file. So we have some images that is present on a Google Cloud storage bucket. And again, if you are not familiar with Google Cloud or what a storage bucket is, essentially think of it as a file system kind of a storage that lets you store large files, right? Images, videos, and so on. So that is what a storage bucket is. And I'm going to copy this particular image, right? Which says fetus, catus, cat on snow. I'm going to copy that into my local folder, load that image. And the prompt that I'm going to be sending the model is describe this image. We spoke about before, right? Predictive, how the way we came to Gen AI. Right? Initially, you would train models using the typical machine learning way. You would give labeled images, get the model to understand what these images are, what they mean, and then it recognizes new images. With Gen AI, it inherently learns this, right? So it based on the text, based on the information that is learned from, it is able to now identify these images, and especially with multimodal, right? The multimodal models helps easily understand what the images that we're giving it. So I'm going to say describe this image. And finally, I'll be outputting both the prompt, which I gave, as well as the response that comes from the model. Okay, so I'm executing this. And you can see that I'm actually executing because what was there in the cell actually refreshed, it went away. So this is the prompt. This is the cat on snow. And describe this image. This is a gray tabby cat walking in the snow. It's talking about the eyes on the nose of the cat, about its tail being long and fluffy. You could go on reading about cats. No? Anyway. So this is where you're giving it an image, right? And telling it to describe the image. As simple as that. I think this is an amazing description that it gives you. The background is a snowy field. Of course, it's walking on snow. So this is something that you could do with the provision model. Let's go more, right? Let's see what more the model can do. So here I have an image of what is potentially boats. And my prompt is describe the scene. Very similar to the previous one. Okay, let's try that out. So this is the image, boats on water. The response is coming up. You can see it refreshing as I'm waiting for it. And again, as I said, you will see that it's working when you see the star here, if you're not familiar with Python notebooks or Jupyter notebooks. Scene is a river with two boats on it. Identified correctly that there are two boats. The boats are anchored, potentially. It's anchored. There's a motor up in the air, so maybe, yes, it is anchored. Buildings, bridges, and so on. Awesome. Lot of information in there. Again, the question is open-ended, right? Describe the scene. The model explained whatever it could find out. Cool. Let's try something else. And all of this is there in the notebook, so you should be able to try this out. You should be able to use your own images. So go crazy. Try out what you want. Second, I will load another image, describe the scene, and okay. In the previous case, we loaded the image from the cloud storage into my local folder and loaded that image. Here, I'm loading image from a URL, right? Essentially the same, but then we are showing you the different ways of using the API, the capabilities of the SDK, right? You don't need to actually download an image and then upload the image, as bytes, but you can directly load, point to the URL where the image is present, and it should work fine as well. Just use the correct methods. Okay, so yeah, this is another, and again, this is the way the model interpreted the image this time. As I said, it 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 is open-ended, right? It gives you the correct answers, but the way it could give to you is different. Like if you were to ask me a question, I may tell you something today, I may not tell you exactly the same thing tomorrow, right? But the information that I'll give you is going to be correct, um, to the best of my knowledge. So yeah, awesome. Simple use cases, right? Now let's go into something which is more complex. What I saw before was essentially in a one-shot prompting. You ask a question, you get an answer. But now I want the answer in a specific way. I could write a detailed textual description of how I want the output. But another way of doing it is what we call few shot prompting. In few shot prompting, you give the model some examples, right? You say, this is your input, this is the output for it. This is the input, and if it were me, this is how I would give the output. Okay, now this is the third input. You give me the output for this, right? And the model learns. It learns to understand what you are expecting or how you want the answers, and it gives you the answers in a consistent format. So that is few shot prompting. So here we have three images. We have the prompts for the first two images. So we are actually giving it the prompt in terms of what the answer looks like. And finally, we give it the third image, and it knows from the first two prompts that we have that I'm expecting the similar kind of an output for the third image. So let's run this. The first is that of the Big Ben, and what I've said is I want it as a city and a landmark, right? You see this is in a JSON format. So give it the city, give it the landmark. Next is the Eiffel Tower. Again, I have given this input city and landmark. And the third image I've given it is a Colosseum, of course. And it gives us a response. So this is the response coming from the model. It tells us city is Rome, landmark is Colosseum, exactly the way that we want it. Okay, so this is few shot prompting. This is another way that you work with the models. We are not limited just to images. We can also do this with videos, right? And that is the power of multimodality. The model has learned how to interpret all these different kinds of media. Okay, so from a video file, this time we have this video file. I'm providing the URI to this, and let's put the video on the screen first. So this is what it. Okay, so it's actually a video, right? And I don't know if the audio came through, but if it didn't, you will see what the model detected from the prompt that is there below. Okay, so this is my prompt, right? Answer the following questions using only this video as a context. What is the profession of this person on the screen or in the video? What are the main features of the phone highlighted? I have not seen this video here in along with you, but then I'm assuming that there is a phone that is being spoken about in this video. Which city was this recorded in? Not very obvious, but maybe the model is able to identify that. And I'm also being specific. Provide this output in a JSON format. So let's run this. You can see that it is running again, right? It's actually going through this video. It's analyzing it, processing it, and because it's a video, it's going to take a little bit of time, right? It's not as simple as an image or a text, where it has to actually go through, understand this video, and then process the response here. So yeah, and there it is. It completed. So this is an output in JSON as we requested. What is the profession of the person? Photographer. What are some of the features that have been spoken about? Night sight and video boost. These are features that have been spoken about in that video of that particular phone that's being spoken about. And which city was this recorded in? Tokyo. I think that is fair. That is exactly what I was expecting. So try this out, right? So these are all the use cases that you could do. Walk through this notebook. This is the end of this particular Skills Boost lab. Try this out. There were these places where you could put in your own questions. And even in these cases, right, you have videos that you want to try out, you want to send to the model, you have any images that you want to try out. Bring in your own images, your own videos, your own prompts, and play around with this model within this lab instance, right? So that you can see what it can do. Awesome. So that's the first lab. Cool. Now, as I said, as part of this session, we have two labs that we're making available for you that we would like you to try out. We had a look at Gemini Pro and the Gemini Pro Vision. And I did get a note that probably my voice wasn't audible when I was playing that video, but I hope nothing much was missed, maybe a few seconds. So the second model is the multimodality. So after been talking about the power, or the way Gen AI has been innovating is bringing in multimodal capabilities. And we have the Gemini Pro Vision model that actually comes to you natively with these multimodal capabilities. We saw a bit of that, right? Asking some questions, but let's go into more details now. Let's look at more advanced use cases. And that is part of this lab, which is multimodality with Gemini. Again, the way to run this lab is the same way. Log into your Skills Boost account, uh, get a feel for what we are talking about, what we're going to be explaining in this lab. Start the lab, log in, and in the same way as before, you will go into the Vertex AI workbench. You will open the Gen AI Jupyter lab. You'll open the Jupyter lab from that instance workspace that you provisioned. And this time, we will go into the Gemini use cases folder. And let's take a look at the intro multimodal use cases file. Okay. And steps are simple again. Go through this notebook step by step, one cell at a time, and you should be able to see one, the capabilities of the model, and two, how you use the Python SDK. Right. So look at the code and try to get a feel for it in terms of how we do it. And again, if you're running this in the lab format, as you do each of those steps, you could always come back here and check your progress to see that you did those steps, right? If it actually worked, or maybe there was some issue and you did not do uh, something that was asked, right? So you could check your progress here, right? This is a very handy feature for you in Skills Boost to see that you're tracking well. All right, let me go into the second notebook. So the way you would go here is, again, come into Gen AI, go into Gemini, go into use cases this time, and intro to the multimodal use cases. Okay, so I have that open here. I'm going to close this, and I probably have about 20 minutes for this. So similar thing again, this is a lab that is made available for you. I think it's best to probably listen to me, watch me execute this lab by myself. I'll walk you through some of these steps, what is happening, and so on. I do believe that's going to be useful for you. But then after this, you can of course go try out this lab by yourself, play around with these notebooks, give your own prompts, and experiment with these models. Okay, I will run through the first few cells here. This is something I've already described in the past. We will again install the Vertex AI SDK. It already exists. It's the same instance that I'm running it on. And I will restart the runtime. Okay, so the kernel is restarting. Need a sip of water for what I've been talking. Okay, good. Similar steps as before: authenticating a notebook, getting your Google Cloud instance in place. Let's run through this, and finally importing the Vertex AI libraries. Good. This is the basic work. This is setup work done, and now we are ready to get started with the model itself. This time we will jump directly into the provision model, because what we want to do as part of this lab is to look at the multimodal use cases, right? So we're going to concentrate on that. We're going to focus on that. So I will instantiate, or I will get access to the Gemini provision model using the SDK. And like before, we are going to be working with images. We're going to be working with videos. So I'm going to set up a few helper functions that lets me easily load these images. Okay. So in the multimodal use cases, right? One of the capabilities, as we said, you saw previously, it was multimodal, right? We gave it images, we gave it videos, and we gave it a prompt, right? Either describing the video or asking something specific about the video, maybe giving us a response as a JSON output. We worked very specifically in the context of one media, if I could call it that. Right? And there was, of course, a few shot prompting where we had those two images and then we had the third image, but everything is in the context of one media. The power of multimodal is you could work with media, you could work with all these modes in a very natural way. Right? So one of the ways that we're doing here, that we're going to demonstrate it as part of this particular section, is how Gemini can reason across multiple images, information from image one and image two, and put the two together, right? So let's run this, and then I'll talk about what's happening. Okay. Um, I will execute this first. Or no. Okay. So we have two images. We have one which is called banana apple. We will see what the image is. And the second thing is called price list. These are two images, right? Then what we are doing essentially, and you will get the gist of it now, right? There is one image which has some bananas and apples, probably. And then there's a second thing, which is a price list, which I'm expecting to contain the price of bananas and apples. Right now, what I'm trying to find is I'm trying to find the cost of all the fruits available in the first image based on the information that is there in the second image, right? Okay, so this is how I give instructions to the model now. And this is the chain of thought reasoning, where we are going to tell the model step by step how to think about the question. Don't just ask a question and blurt out the answer, but reason the way that you're approaching the problem, the way that I'm asking you these questions. And then finally, once you go through it step by step, the way that I would probably think, do all these steps and then give me the final output. Right. So this is the way in which we are able to do a chain of thought prompting. Okay. So the prompt is, question is simple. How much should I pay for the fruits given the following price list? Right. Two images, fruits, price list, and I want to know how much should I pay for the fruits. I'm telling the model how to think now. Step one, firstly, identify what kind of fruits are there in the first image. I'm not told it what fruits are there. It needs to identify that. Count the quantity of each fruit. It's not just finding out there's a fruit in there, but how many such fruits are there in that image. For each item from the first image, which is where the fruits are, find the price of that item from the second image. Right? So firstly, there's an image. Secondly, that there is information in that image in the form of maybe the name of a fruit and some cost associated. So it's not just identifies that there is that image, but actually extracts information from that. Now calculate the subtotal price for each type of fruit. As you recall, there could be multiple fruits per type. And finally, calculate the total price. Right? So very clear instructions step by step how to approach the problem. That's all I'm doing. It seems exhaustive, but you see there's a lot of intelligence that is there here, right? The way the model is able to go and understand and perceive these images. Okay, so let's run this. So the first image is this fruit basket, sort of obscuring the fruits inside, and the fruits are out of focus as well. But we do see there are bananas and potentially apples in there. Then the second image is the price list, multiple fruits, but you also have the prices of the bananas and the apples on top. Yeah. So bananas and apples are there, the price list for that. And this is the prompt that we gave. Okay. This did not execute. There was an error. Let me try this again. Okay. It is being processed. Let's hope that this works. If not, I could probably show you the pre-generated response. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it worked this time. I had this notebook open for a while. Probably there was some glitch, but nevertheless, all's well that ends well. And you can see that this is a live demo, right? So always good when such things happen. So step one, it identifies there are apples. There are apples and bananas, 3 apples and 2 bananas. In fact, when I was looking at this image, the third apple is so difficult to find, right? It's somewhere there behind. So there's 1, 2 apples and 1 third apple behind, and the model is able to find this. I'm impressed. 3 apples, 2 bananas. We are asking it explicitly to identify the quantity of each of these groceries that is there in that image. So it identifies the quantities. It looks up the price of the apple and the price of the banana from this price list, which is again an image. If you remember, I'm stressed upon this multiple times because it's pulling out intelligence from an image. Then the subtotal does the calculation and finally gives me the grand total, right? The price of all the fruits in that basket or in that image, which is $6.10. Amazing. This is your use case of multimodal, right? How you can use different modalities, how you can get the model to interpret these images and give you answers, gives you some results. But it's not limited to just images, right? We've done a bit of these images in the previous notebook as well. Also, how about wireframes, UI, screenshots, right? So maybe let's see what we can do from this. So let's go into some a little bit more complex scenarios. Here, I will. So there is an image, there's a photo of it's called a stove, or you could call it a microwave oven, right? Whichever one this is, it's an oven essentially, right? And I mean, imagine this, right? There's not much context. There's just this image with a lot of buttons in it, and I'm not even telling what this is, right? So what I want to do is I want to know how can I reset the clock on this appliance, whatever it is, and further, I'm asking the model to give me the information in English and in French. And if the instructions include buttons, explain where those buttons are physically located. I would say this is quite complex, right? So let's run this, right? And you should be able to see the way the response. And I've ended the prompt with JSON, so it's going to give the output in the form of a JSON. All right. Pretty much. No? Okay. Ignore the JSON bit for now. It's not very clear what I mean by JSON, so maybe I should be more specific. But this is the prompt, and let's look at the response. So to reset the clock on this appliance, follow these steps. Locate the clock button on the control panel. It is located to the right side of the panel. So we've asked to tell us where these buttons are, right? So firstly, it identified from the image, sorry, I'm scrolling multiple times. It identified from the image that there is a clock button on the panel. I've asked it to tell me how to reset the clock. So it's located on the right side of the panel below delay start. So it identified even that. Press and hold the clock button for 3 seconds. Potentially, I do not know how it was able to find that out. Maybe it's there somewhere here, but it's giving you something, right? Giving you some ways of going and trying to reset the clock. So hold it for 3 seconds. The clock will begin to flash. Use the number buttons to enter the correct time, and then press the clock button again to save the time. The clock is now reset. And then the second thing is the same thing is there in French. And I am not going to attempt to read this, but it gave me the instructions in English and French. What is very interesting here is this is essentially how you would probably go and try to solve a problem. Right? You look at a device for the first time, you probably, if you don't have a user manual handy, this is exactly how you would go do it. You would find the button called clock, maybe if you want to reset the clock, press upon it for a few seconds, see that the lights start flashing, maybe, and then press a few buttons to change it, like change the time. I mean, this is amazing. The way that it is able to, from this image, identify what you could potentially be doing is great. So try this out, and maybe since we had an incomplete prompt here, you could probably try this out as a JSON, right? Maybe ask the prompt to give you this output as a JSON with step numbers, maybe. So you have step 1 instruction, step 2 instruction. It's open to you. Try that out. So this is another way of actually working with the multimodal model. Okay, and as the note says, the response, it may not be accurate. We really don't know this, right? What kind of a stove this is, what kind of an oven this is. Is this exactly the way to do it or not? Whether it's 3 seconds, whether it's 5 seconds, whether it's 10 seconds, I don't know. But it's a great start. So not just this, right? And as we said, it could go into wireframes, UIs, mockups, and so on. And now we will do an experiment with an ER diagram. So let's take a technical diagram, an entity relationship diagram, and let's give that to the model and see what it does with it. So we're able to provide these kind of things and get the model maybe to generate a code and so on. We're going to keep it simple here, but again, it's open to you to experiment with this once you get your hands on this node. So here we have an ER diagram, and my prompt is simple: document the entities and relationships in this ER diagram. Okay, we are going to use some specific configuration. Again, this is a technical diagram. We want the model to be precise, not be too creative and open-ended. So we are adjusting the parameters accordingly. Let's execute this. And this is the ER diagram that we have given. So category sales, store, and so on. So it looks like some sort of a inventory, maybe. Let's see. And this is the response that's coming from the model. ER diagram contains the following entities. It talks about each of those things that is there: category sales, convenience store, vendor. Though the image itself is a bit blurry, at least to my eye, the model is able to identify it really well. And it also talks about the kind of relationships. So category has a one-to-many relationship with the sales entity. If I can find category and I can sales, you see here that this is a one-to-many relationships. So it is able to actually identify this, right, based on what it's learned, based on all the kind of training that the model has gone through. It is able to understand the technical parts of these images, right? Not just uh, images of cats and boats, but even technical diagrams can be understood, and the model can help you out with that. Okay. Awesome. Let's go to the next one then. Recommendations based on multiple images this time. So in this use case, we are talking about some sort of a matching or an interpretation, right? Essentially, what we have is, and while I get this cell running, we have two kinds of eyeglasses, spectacles, the way you would like to call it. And we are asking the model to recommend which may be the right fit for me based on the shape of my face. Okay. And and what I'm saying is I have an oval face, right? My face is oval in shape. So based on this, come up with what glass may suit me well. Um, okay, so the two glasses are given, and explain how you reach this decision. And here I think we're a little bit more clear reasoning for this in the JSON format. So I'm hoping that, did I run this cell? Yes, I did. So I'm hoping that this time the response does come out in a way that, in a JSON format. Okay, and there we are. So these are the two glasses. This is one, this is glass two, and the model is recommending glass two for me. And the reason is glass two is better suited for an oval face because they have a rounder shape. I'm not a fashion expert, but maybe the model has learned all these things, right? So talks about the eyes and cheekbones and how it draws attention and so on. So it explains why it came up with this decision. And since I asked for the reasoning in the output in a JSON format very explicitly, the output is in a JSON, right? So this is something. If you were to build an application for a consumer, and then maybe these are some of the things why you would need this kind of a response in a technical format as opposed to a textual format, right? So you need to understand what kind of use cases you're building out and then design the prompt appropriately. Okay, I think we have a couple more probably, and let me quickly go through this. But you understand the gist here. You understand what the model can do. Here, what we're doing is we're getting the model to compare between two images. So if you have two images of the same landmark, and we're asking the image what is there in this, we're asking the model what is there in this image, what is the similarity between these two images, and what is the difference between the two images. So let's run through that. This is the image one. Image two looks potentially the same, but maybe the number of people, there is this person here is not here. So let's see what is this. Image one shows a square in Munich, Germany, square surrounded with buildings and so on. So including the Feldernhalle. So gives you the information, a lot of good descriptive information about this. The similarity, which is the second response, it shows the same square in Munich, Germany, surrounded by the same buildings. It's able to find out how the two images are related to each other. And the difference, which is the third question that we asked, there are more people shown in image one. And it also says that there are more people sitting on the ground in image one, right? So what the image sees, but it's pretty accurately able to compare two different images, right, which are actually very similar in nature. It's able to compare the two, describe these images, as well as give you the differences between them. Going on, oops, I run this again. Going on from the image to a video now, right? So here what we have is we have this video, and we're going to ask the model what is shown in this video. Where should I go to see it, right? So some contextual information, not just describe the video, but then where should I go to see it, and what are the top 5 places in the world that look like this? So a lot of, again, matching requirements that we're giving to the model. So let's run this. This is the video. I'm not going to play this because I think last time there was a technical glitch when I did that and my voice was not coming through. So this time again, it's a video. The model is going to take a little bit more time than simple images, and it's going to give you a response. Okay, video shows the city of Antalya, Turkey. Talks about the image, water, Mediterranean Sea. Mediterranean Sea is again based on, it knows it's Antalya, Turkey, and it knows this is the Mediterranean Sea, right? So that's amazing. Um, Top 5 places that look like this are so on and so forth, right? Lisbon, Marseille, Barcelona, and so on. Yeah, maybe something to put on your travel list. This is again a great use case for you to work with um, video for one, and follow up questions based on this video, right? So more intelligence from this video and something related to this video. These are the kind of use cases that you can actually create with multimodal models. The notebook helpfully provides a link to the Wikipedia article. So this is just a comment. This is not information given to the model or was this output by the model. But if you want to validate that this is indeed what the model says it is, I'm trusting the model here. But if this is indeed what the model says it is, then there's a wiki link that you could go and verify. But bring in your own videos as well. Okay, and probably the last one, or maybe the second to last. This time we're going to ask questions based on the video. What's in this video? What is happening in this video? What's the action here? And provide 10 best tags for this video. So we're going to help describe a video, right? Automatic video tag generation, probably, or description generation. So let's run this. This seems to be a photography.mp4. What's in this video? What is action in this video? And some tags. We will wait for it to run through. And I have 3 more minutes before which I would want to stop and probably open it up for some questions and what else is coming up as part of this program, right? So I don't want to take all the time, but this part was important to help you understand what is it that you're going to be doing with each of these notebooks and what the model is going to be doing for you. Okay, video shows a man in a hat taking pictures of some artwork. The person seems to be looking at the artwork. So yes, and there are some tags, right? Vacation, Mexico. Why Mexico? Probably based on the artwork that is there. I wouldn't know, but good to know. That's what this image is describing. And let's run the final prompt again. Again, we are being very specific here to ask the model to answer questions based only on this video. What is the profession? What are the features of the phone highlighted? Where was this recorded? I think they've done this before. I'm assuming it's the same video as before. Yes. So the one that was about the phone in Tokyo. So this is while it outputs a response, I'll just quickly do the last one. And again, it's not just with reference to that video, not within the context of that video. Has this finished? Not just within the context of that video, but getting more information associated with this or related to this video. Think of it as the way we use the chat model, with history, with some context to what we had before, and that is something you could do with the video as well. So this is same as before, as we seen in the previous notebook. So photographer, the features in the Tokyo, but then this last one is a video of a train. I'm not going to play this. You could do this when you run your own notebooks, but it looks to be a video where I'm assuming the train is going to be moving. So where is this? Which line is this? Where does it go? And what are the stations and stops, right? So it's not just it's a train on a river, on a bridge, and so on, right? But there's a lot more information that the model needs to understand about what this image represents. Okay, and this is the O train confederation line, goes from point A to point B, and the stations en route. And a link for you to actually verify that the model gave you the right output. But yeah, these were some prompts that we have given to you as an example. The purpose, the intention behind all of this is to showcase the multimodal capabilities of the model. Firstly, for you to realize what the model can do, right? How can it actually work in these multimodal scenarios and how you can work with it using all these different kind of contexts. But also an opportunity for you to now think about use cases that you can unlock or that you can create with such capable models, right? So play around with this notebook, maybe try out your own prompts. You have some cells at the bottom. You do some of this, bring in your own image, own videos, multiple videos, images, get the model to find relationships between them. um, the world is your oyster, right? So go try out what you would want. With that, I will end the notebook section of it, and I will go back to my deck. I am done with this part of my session. I've given you an introduction of how we reached here, what these models are, what are the models that you can use today. Gemini is out there, a really powerful model of ours that is out there for you to use, and you can go get around started using that using these notebooks that we have provided. With that, thank you so much for listening in. I will probably hang around a little bit if you have any questions, and I will hand it back to Timon.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Prashant, for that session. It was absolutely great. I love the multimodality. You covered so much, plenty to think about. I hope it did it for all of you too. Before I'll let you catch some breath before we go to the Q&A session to answer some of the questions that came in. I want to first address a couple of comments that were on the chat and Q&A panel. Please refer to the resources tab and FAQ tab on our main webpage. You will find the answers to most of the questions regarding the labs, access to the credits, a list of recommended covered labs, GitHub repo link. All of this is available on our website. So if you scroll up, you will see resources and FAQ. Most of those questions should be answered over there. Remember, the access to Cloud Skills Boost platform is free for all of you, and you should have received your unique link in the reminder or confirmation email. And there are a couple of instructions that were sent over with that. So please make sure you follow these instructions. But if in any case you still have some issues accessing those credits, please refer to support@quicklabs.com or in a live chat on their site. They can help you. Great. With that, I was talking about credits. So actually, Prashant will still have a minute or two. You can still pop some questions to the Q&A panel. I wanted to draw your attention to the Google for Startups Cloud program. So as you and your startup embark on this exciting Gen AI learning journey with our experts, I'm certain you'll want to try the products and solutions you just saw on the presentation. You want to try it for yourself. If you're a startup, you can apply for up to $350,000 in cloud credits via our startup program and start building these Gen AI solutions for your business right away. You can see all the details or the QR code. You can see all the details of the link. We have various support offers for every different stage of startup, whether you're bootstrap or you already secured your VC funding. We also have tailored programs for our AI first and the Web3 companies. So go ahead, scan a QR code, visit the link that has just been dropped into the chat to find out more about our cloud program. It's an amazing opportunity because everything you just saw, you can start building for your own business. Great. I will now use a little bit of the more time that I have with Prashant. So I'll invite him back to the stage. Yeah, he is here. And let's start with the simple one, but maybe this is not so simple for people outside of Google. I'm using Google Bard every single day. I hope a lot of people here is using Bard as well. And the question is, how is Gemini, the multimodal model, different from Google Bard?
Awesome. Great question. Great to get started with that question. As you rightly said, Timon, most of us have used Bard, right? And it begs us the question: what is Gemini? How's relation to Bard, and so on. So I think what you need to understand is one, you have these large language models. You have the foundation models, right? And Gemini is a foundation model. It is a model that gives you these APIs that, using these SDKs that give you these capabilities that you would program against, that you would work against, right? So that is the model itself. What is Bard? Bard is an application, right? Bard is an interface that is provided to you, that you essentially a chat interface that is provided to you, right? Where you ask questions, you get responses, and so on. Now, how do you build an application out like this? There has to be something behind the scenes that is powering it, right? Now, Bard is being powered by these models that we have created, and uh, you know, in most of the cases now, you would see again, look at your own the announcements that we have made, but behind the scenes, behind Bard is a foundation model that is powering, receiving your questions as prompts and giving you back a completion, which is an output. And that is where Gemini lies, right? So Gemini is lying behind the scenes, actually uh, running these capabilities, whereas Bard is the application that is built on top of it. Now, related to what you would do, if you would have to build an application, if you are planning to build a new use case, what would you be using, right? You could probably try around your questions and what the responses could be with Bard. As I mentioned before, however, we have the Vertex AI Studio, right? That is where you could go actually try it out, or the notebook itself, right? So you will be interacting with Gemini, you'll be interacting with the model itself and building your use cases on top of that, just like what Bard has done. Right? So I hope that answers the question. Again, not into
Yeah,
too many details there, but I hope that answers it.
yeah, I see this. This is like a user interface. The Bard is for everyone, but what lies behind Bard is think like Gemini, so that people can use Gemini and other models to build solutions like Bard. Okay, I have the second one from Sigita Vismin. How much history is remembered in the chat? Are there any limitations of the context where chat is allowed?
Um, Good question. Um, I don't have my notebook handy right now. I mean, I don't want to bring it up and change the context here. But if you remember, and you could see this in your notebooks when you tried out as well, is when we saw the chat history, right? You saw that there were a lot of there was the prompt from the user, the response from the model, the prompt from the user, response from the model, and so on. So this builds up over time, right? As you're interacting with this model, you will keep seeing a history. That is one thing. The second thing is technically how these models work. So you can look at some of these models that we have, you can look at the documentation, and you can see the context window size, the number of tokens that it can process. So, yes, given a chat that is long enough, that exceeds this the number of tokens that can be supported, you will lose some of the history, right? I think the question was how much of the history is remembered. So you will
Yeah.
definitely lose some of this history. So the answer is yes. It depends on what model you're using, what size of model that you're using. Different models have different sizes, right? So based on that, some of the histories can be lost, and it's now up to you when you're building the application to decide how you're going to work with this.
Gotcha. We're talking about the tokens, and actually, there's another question about tokens by Strongich or Strongich. Not sure how to pronounce, but basically, does prompt convert into token, and is it used to compute cost of the query? Like with the bigger prompt, larger instruction means it is more expensive. How does it look like in terms of the costs? Especially, we know that at startups you should very carefully look at the cost side as well. So how does it work with the prompts and the cost?
Sure. No, so these models, right? The APIs that you're using, they are built based on tokens, right? As you rightly asked, um, the exact details of these. It's also important to understand again that is probably beyond the scope of this introductory session, but there's a lot of information. There's enough documentation out there that we could probably point you to. But the prompts that you give in and the responses that you get, so you can also decide how long of a response that you want. So all of these are converted into tokens, and you are billed based on these tokens, right? Tokens input and output. So answer is yes. How much does it cost? You can definitely see in our prices documentation. That is a source of truth. So you will be able to see the cost per token or cost per 1,000 tokens, right? The way it is put out there, and then you can make a decision in terms of how you would want to use this model, and take it from there. So I hope that answers your question. But you're on the right track. You will find information on this in our documentation.
Great. Another one that I'm seeing, it's obvious that those models were trained on some subset of data, but do they have access to the internet? So the models, the question is, do the models in these labs have access to the internet? So, for instance, can I give it an image and ask the model to search for something into the web and get more results?
Okay. Uh, Good question, and I like the way you're thinking, right? In terms of what you want to do, I'm sure you're thinking of you have a use case in mind. Um, the models themselves don't do any activity, right? It is you as the application developer who's building your application, the GenAI application on top of these models, and you do something to this effect, right? So the models themselves don't go around. You don't ask, you cannot get it to execute a task or an activity. Right now, again, there are ways in which you can do this, and I think this is a great question, a great lead into some of the upcoming sessions, right? Because we are going to be talking about some of these use cases in terms of how you would actually use the capabilities of these models and use, let's say, real-time information to build out these applications and use cases, right? So hang on to your hats. This is a great question, and I'm sure we will show you how you can do some of these things in the upcoming sessions.
Great, thank you so much. I think we're almost on time, and I still need a few minutes to close this session. So I would like to thank you very much. And I saw a couple of comments, and thank you, all of you, for the feedback provided in the chat. But I think they loved you and this session. I think it was very inspirational. So thank you so much for your presence and the introduction to the world of multimodal generative AI. Thank you very much. And for all of you guys, we are having the Q&A panel open. We are trying to answer most of the questions that are over there, and we'll try to answer all of those that are still not answered. Great questions. So please give us some time. All that's left for me to do is to remind you all about our next session, which is applications of generative AI for your business, which will be at the same time as today's class, but on Thursday. And over the next 6 weeks, we're going to have Tuesdays and Wednesdays the same time. If you haven't already added it to your calendar, now it's time to ensure you don't miss it. You still can recommend this startup school to your colleagues in your startups that might be interested in it. The next session will be packed full of exciting demos. So you will see how this can be applied for your business. And we're going to have demos and examples from different industries. It will be led by one of our most inspiring Googlers, head of customer engineering, Emily Ryan. And you definitely don't want to miss that one. With that, have a good week. I'm so happy that I had all of you here, and I'll see you in class in just 2 days on Thursday. Take care.